into the future, what do you see? I really need to know now, is there a place for me? If we're gonna survive, the dream must stay alive.
Authorities are appealing for calm throughout the evacuation process.
The Tribe, A New World by A.J. Penn. Chapter 5. There hadn't been a breeze for days. The little boat was motionless, with no noticeable current pushing it along. All around, the ocean itself was now lifeless. There were no waves. None of the movement of the boat, pitching and rolling, that had been so much a part of their voyage so far. There was an eerie silence. Not a sound, even from the calm water all around them, except for the noise of static. Inside the trawler, Jack leant over the radio in the wheelhouse, twisting its dials, concentrating as he listened intently. Each day, Jack had turned on the radio for a few minutes at a time, hoping to preserve its battery for as long as possible. But today, just like all the other times he had tried, all he had gotten back so far was the sound of radio silence. What are you hoping to get? The top 10 best-selling songs? The weather forecast? There's nothing, Jack, Ellie said, as she sat beside Jack wearily, her voice hoarse and dry. There has to be someone out there. Someone still transmitting. A ship, Jack insisted, though he seemed less convinced as each frequency he tried resulted in squealing static. Someone else. Some land. Somewhere. You don't give up, do you? Ellie said admiringly, kissing Jack on the side of his face through her cracked, dehydrated lips. They were in the doldrums, the heat from the blazing midday sun overhead glaring down onto the boat. The rest of the tribe took as best shelter as they could, lounging in the shade to conserve their energy. Apart from Jack and Ellie in the wheelhouse, the others were all taking refuge around the upper deck. Darryl was trying to entertain Lottie, Sammy and Brady, doing impressions of famous adults from the old days. Hudell had hero-worshipped in his dreams of becoming an actor, though neither Lottie, Sammy or Brady knew who Hudell was impersonating, being too young to remember the adult celebrities of the past. They were entertained by the odd voices he was making, the strange expressions on his face. They had difficulty focusing in their state, and there was no enthusiasm in Darryl's performance. He just didn't seem to have the strength, and his twisted facial expressions took on a surreal, haunted element. His eyes drained of hope, almost life. May and Zack were half asleep, leaning on each other for support. May had felt elated, suspecting she might have found a soulmate at last, though she wished this had happened in another place, another time, where she might have had more time to enjoy their growing relationship. Slade rested his arm on Ruby, her head on his chest as she slept. Stroking her hair tenderly, Slade had enjoyed the renewal of his friendship with Ruby since they embarked on the boat. He and Ebony still hadn't spoken further about their fallout over Mega's death. Neither had the energy or desire, not wanting to risk conflict with one another, especially in front of the other tribe members, and not now, when their very survival was at stake. All were intent on conserving their precious life force. Ruby had kept Slade company the past day or so, not saying much, just being there with him. That's what friends were for, wasn't it? It was just that. Friendship? Nothing else? Slade couldn't help but feel there might be something more than friendship, though, on his part. But his thoughts were dominated by the recent loss of his brother, and whether he was also about to confront his own mortality. Jell seemed to be drifting in and out of semi-consciousness. Lex was keeping an eye on Ram, who was preoccupied, lost in some secret thought. Ebony was fast asleep. But as Trudy stared at her, she wondered if Ebony was actually dead. Trembling with anxiety, Trudy wiped away tears filling her eyes. She was deeply concerned about Brady, but she tried to keep herself calm, holding her emotions in check. She didn't want Brady to see her so upset. The others had tried to keep Trudy's spirits uplifted, to support her, but she knew there was nothing anyone could do to help. It was just like the days when the adults were wiped out, Trudy worried, though this time she was sure it was their turn to face their doom. Part of her hoped she would succumb before Brady, but another part of her couldn't bear to think of Brady left on her own. Perhaps it would be better for Brady's end to occur first. In Trudy's fragile state of mind, she was beginning to consider if it was her duty as a mother to take back the life she had given her child, to end her suffering. On the outer deck, Celine once again dangled the fishing line out of the water. They hadn't caught any fish for a couple of days, with none visible in the silent ocean. It felt like even the fish had abandoned them, leaving them to their isolation, except for a few sharks trailing the little boat. Celine seemed too weak to have noticed the fins protruding on the surface. It hadn't rained for a while. The last of the water collected by Jack's tarpaulin invention, draped on the roof of the boat, had been used up earlier that morning. With no food, no water, it was the hardest part of their voyage since they had left the shore. Everyone was starving, sunburned, dehydrated. It was just a matter of time. Surely, they just had a few days left. Everyone knew it, though nobody voiced it. But it was like all of the tribe were mentally preparing for it, coming to terms with the possibility that they might be experiencing what could be the last few days of their lives. None of them wanted to give up. They weren't ready for the end, but so much of what they faced was out of their hands. If they didn't get food or water soon, they knew deep down they would all perish. They were all in the same situation, united in adversity, their fates bound together. The quarrels and disagreements that had so characterized the voyage had now ceased. They had lost energy even for that. Whatever conversations they did have, brief as they were ones of encouragement. Not conflict, support. The stark situation they faced was bringing them all together closely. They may have not had much hope, but they still had each other. Ram was still a source of irritation to all, however, which he brought about himself. He could never relate to the mole rats. His was a different ideology. Amber glanced at baby Bray, fast asleep, with Jay cradling Amber's child in his arms. Jay himself deep in sleep on the deck of the trawler. Like Trudy, Amber worried greatly about the future of her own child. As parents themselves, Trudy and Amber had a perspective nobody else could fully appreciate. But where Trudy was a single mother, Amber was glad to have Jay in her life. With her own survival in jeopardy, and that of her son, Amber's thoughts turned once more to Bray, the father of her child. Was he really dead? Or was he out there somewhere and had survived? Maybe he had met someone else, like she had with Jay, and began a new life. Whatever the situation, he would always remain precious to her thoughts, her entire being. She would always care for his memory, but Jay was Amber's present life, and her future, if they would only live to see it. Ram began cackling quietly to himself. He was trying to restrain his giggling, but in spite of his efforts, he couldn't help but erupt into manic laughter. "What's so funny?" Amber asked. I was just thinking. Dead men tell no tales, Ram said. "What the hell's that supposed to mean?" Lex snapped. "Don't know about you, Lexi boy, but it looks as if all my secrets will be going with me to my grave, along with everyone else around here." "You're pathetic," Amber exclaimed. Something suddenly caught Amber's attention out of the corner of her eye. She turned to look at the ocean, and for a moment thought she was seeing things. Perhaps it was a vision, brought on by her weakened physical state. Amber stared, open-eyed, making sure what she saw was real. "Oh my God!" Amber yelled excitedly, her mouth dry. "What is it?" Jay awoke with a start, carefully standing up with Amber's child in his arms. "Everyone, look!" Amber screamed, delirious, pointing out to the ocean. And there, in the distance, on the horizon, the outline of a massive ship loomed.